Welcome to my free series of leadership and ritual facilitation videos. You can donate to help me offer more of these classes and write on these topics. There's more information in the video details below.
Next on the list is handling the magic. For handling the magic, the bigger the group, the more energy they generate, and the harder it is to control. Should the pre-ritual briefing include what the work is and how to contain the mojo, and of course, what to do if your poppet flying monkey gets away from you.
All right, you're gonna have to explain the poppet flying monkey because I don't really work with poppet.
I just put that together as your energy construct. You know, the magic thing that you put together. What happens if the magic gets away from you, or your potion fizzles? Pop culture references here. If you're trying to levitate your feather, what happens if it all explodes? So
Expelliarmus.
Exactly. So what happens if you've got, the whole bright orange afro there and nothing's working for you, or it works a little too well?
Well, if it works too well, that's exciting. That's exciting. And the only challenge with that is when it works too well and I have to end the ritual at 9 p.m. That's exactly what happened to me in Minneapolis when I did the Paganiscon main ritual. I wasn't expecting there to be quite that many people, in the sense that I knew how many people were attending the conference, but my estimation of how many would actually attend the opening ritual, I was like, oh wow, we have most of the people here at the conference are here at this ritual. That's pretty cool. So the ballroom was a little too small for us. So again, we're not even talking magic here. We're not even talking energy. We're just at logistics. Is the ballroom itself was a little too small. So I was like, okay, some of the stuff that I had planned is going to be very difficult to facilitate in this space. So I'm already triaging that. I always forget how loud drums are, because I rarely get to work with drummers. And I had the Tuatha Dea, which is a band, if you've heard them, and they are all drummers, and they were at my disposal for drumming. The conference organizers said, we'd love to have you use Tuatha Dea for the ritual, for drumming. And I've worked with Danny and the Tuatha Dea drummers before, so I contacted Danny and said, hey, I need some drumming for the ritual. He was like, oh yeah, let's do it. And I always forget how loud drumming is, particularly in a ballroom with a low ceiling. Well, it was a high ceiling, but in context of the room size, it was a lower ceiling than. Anyways, so, and what's really funny about this is that when I was I was setting up for the ritual and people kept on popping into the room, and when I was talking to people who had agreed to take ritual roles, a lot of them were local, and they said, well, what kind of ritual are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm doing a really ecstatic ritual, getting people singing and dancing and drumming, and they were like, oh, good luck doing that here. This is people stand with their arms at their sides for rituals here. So like my assumption was going to be I was going to have to work really hard to get this group chanting. Nothing could be further from the truth. Once I started the chant, I was like, whoa, runaway pony. I mean, this group was so willing to dive into the energy. I had the very rare experience. I almost never have this happen where I have to rein the energy back in, because the pony was running. It was at full gallop. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to finish this ritual by 9 if they keep just going there with this stuff? Like I said, I mean, that ritual could have easily gone on another hour or more, because just people were just willing to go there. And there is something that happens with a bigger group. Like this was at least 200 people. So when you've got bigger groups like that, and when you've got drumming, the energy does kick up higher, or it can kick up. So that's, I very rarely have the experience of having to rein energy in. Usually it's more like, if I stop singing, is the group going to keep going, or do I have to keep singing? I actually had the experience in this ritual of trying to force myself to stop singing so that I could save my voice for later stuff, because I didn't need to sing because the group was taking it and running with it. I almost never have that happen. So it can happen where your ritual runs away. And, and I would say if you're doing a lot of big energetic stuff, ideally you have an open-ended time frame so you can let it roll where it needs to and let the group process out what they need to. This group needed to sing, this group needed to have that ecstatic expression. This group was absolutely ready for that and in the zone for that. And it was joyous and they were reveling in it, and it was fantastic. And I would have just loved to let them keep singing. I would have loved to let them keep singing, but there was more programming after that. So yeah, I mean, it can happen. And I'm trying to think of how to articulate what I do to rein in the energy, because it's most of the time it's pretty subtle. And I'm giving, very subtle little energy cues that I want the volume to drop on the chant. Very occasionally, I have to be incredibly directive with it. So, like, if there's a chant and it's rolling and I really need it to stop for a particular reason, and like if I stop singing and the chant's still rolling, that's probably my biggest subtle tool. Is like, if I'm the one anchoring the chant and the group is singing it, and then I want the chant to kind of fade down, I just stop singing. And once I call it cutting the engines. Once I cut the engines, then people start, it fades. It almost always fades. In this particular instance, it was, it was like a locomotive. It was still going. And so there are specific occasions where I have kind of done this to people kind of close by me, and we're just kind of, I'll do this and then I'll bring it down, and that helps. Because if you've got 5 or 10 people that stop singing, then the people next to them will notice that they stop singing, or they'll get quieter, and then the whole group kind of it ripples out and the whole group gets quieter. But like I said, this is something that happens so rarely. It was a shock. It was a shock that this ran away quite like that. And in any other circumstance where I had control over the end time, I would have just let it roll. There are logistical things as far as energy goes that can become more complicated. Well, first, let me ask you if you have a particular example of this and what happened with it, like what prompts you to ask the question. So let me kind of take a step back and ask you that before I go into more.
I've seen where the drummers sort of get their own sort of idea of where things should be going.
Right.
And of course, as drummers, once we've gone, it takes a while to get us back. And I've seen where a few chanters, like one or two of the really good ones, they basically decide that, and of course, I'm not leading this ritual, so it's not my place to say, knock it off. But I've seen where a few really good chanters, they decide that they're going to do some riffs, do some harmonies, and they just keep going with it and keep going with it and keep going with it. And of course, I'm not leading, I'm standing back, but I'm watching the energy of the crowd going, we're really tired. We'd like to stop now. But,
yes.
You've got one drummer who's like, no, let's go. And he's going back and forth. And the chanter's like, sure, let's run with it. And then before I know it, someone's got their jinglies on and they're going around, and it's, yeah.
Somebody brings out the cowbell and it's all over.
Oh, it's all over with.
It's all over when the cowbell comes out. All right. Well, so in that context, one of the most difficult aspects of energy management, particularly in a large group, is that the energy at the center is very, very, very different from the energy at the edge. So if you have, in this case, I'm talking, 200 people in a ballroom, and I get everybody in really close around the center. Like, I'll usually build a central altar that's very low. And so we're talking about maybe 5 or 7 feet across, maybe up to 9 feet. So that would be like, about 3 meters across, maybe that big, but often smaller than that. So everybody's, that's the inner ring, and then people kind of, ring out from there. So we might be talking 3 rows deep. We might be talking 10 rows deep of people. The energy in the center is going to be very different from the energy on the edge. The edge energy is going to be a lot lighter. It's going to be a lot less intense. And the energy in the center is going to be a lot warmer, a lot more vibrant, a lot more intense, because it's just the way it works. That's it's like a fire. It's very much like a fire. It's hotter at the center, cooler at the edges. And that's problematic if you're facilitating from the center, because you don't necessarily know how tired those people out on the edge are. You can't necessarily get a good sense of that. I think I've developed a pretty good ear for it. I can tell when people's voices are getting tired. And so there's specific things I'll do to go ahead and end the energy raising, because I can tell that people are about to drop out, or I can drop it down and then bring it back up. Those are a couple different techniques I can use. But a lot of it is just I'm listening, like as I'm singing and I'm adding those different layers of energy, I'm listening to the group, and I'm listening to their vocal quality, and I'm listening to the sound level and the volume, and I'm listening to the people around me, and are they panting, trying to catch their breath? I'm listening to all that. And it also, like the speed of the drumming really, really impacts that. If the drumming speeds up too fast, it blows the chant. It absolutely blows the chant. So, and energy goes different ways depending on the group. This particular ritual I'm talking about from Minneapolis, I want to say, if I remember correctly, that the energy popped up really, really fast. And I was using that sacred fire chant, and I couldn't even weave in the second part because everybody was singing the first part so loud. There was no way they were going to pick up the second part. There was just no way. And it didn't matter because they were rolling with it, and there was so much energy, from the drumming, it was just going. But the energy popped up so fast that I knew I wanted to do a second wave of it. So I needed a little transition in there. So yeah, it's there's 2 ways to kind of transition out of that. One is letting the energy peak up and then bringing it down and then bringing it back up again is one way you can do it if it pops up too fast. The other is, if you've got a couple of people who are well, if you've got a drummer who's screwing up the drumming and going too fast, the most expedient thing is to go over to them and just ask them to stop drumming. This doesn't always go well, so I'll just put that out there. I have done that on a couple of occasions when the drummer was absolutely not serving the intention of the ritual. I've asked them to stop drumming. I have seen a drummer who got excessively cranky by being asked this, but their drumming was really blowing the ritual. In the other occasion where I've seen this, the guy was newer to drumming, and he was more than happy to drop out the drumming because he was just drumming really offbeat. And but there are other times where the drumming is going and there is no stopping it because there's no way to go ask the drummer to stop. And there's no real way once drumming has sped up to slow it down. So in those instances, the best thing you can do is peak it up and then try and do a second peak. And I'll just, make the orgasm comparison transparently because, that's sometimes you just gotta let the first wham bam orgasm happen, and then you can bring it down and have, a deeper. Let's go there. Yeah. If you think about ritual energy and sex, they do have a lot of cross comparisons. And so yeah, with the energy kind of popping up. So the one thing I'll bring up is when you've got somebody who is just really, really higher energy than anybody else in the group. And so maybe that person is singing really loud and they're not letting the chant die when it really needs to end. I've had that problem. And then there's the person who goes and grabs the cowbell or the jingle bells and, and they're bouncing around, or there's the person who's just like singing and really in the moment and they're jumping up and down and, and everybody else is in a very different energetic place. So oftentimes that person will burn out their energy, like they're jumping around and dancing so fast, they'll burn out fast and then kind of get back into the groove of the rest of the group. This does not always happen, however. Sometimes I don't know where they're getting the energy to bounce around like that. Like I was doing a ritual once and we're doing the energy raising chant and we're getting to the point where people's voices are starting to get tired and I've dropped my voice out and I'm starting to get people toning. But there's one person standing in the center and she is jumping up and down, like literally jumping up and down. Like she was there. She was in the moment. She was there and she is still singing the chant. And I'm trying to get everybody toning to end the chant out. And she had her eyes closed. And so she's completely unaware of what the rest of the group is doing. And it's not that her experience was it's not that what she was doing was bad. It was just that it wasn't in sync with the rest of the group. And I couldn't sustain that energy level for the rest of the group. The rest of the group, their voices were tired. So I finally had to reach over and grab her arm. And she, looks at me and I just, did the, drop it down thing. And then she joined in the toning and so there are times where I've had to do that. There's another time where I had, so there's a chant that I use that it's different from most of the other chants that I use in that it's one of the very few chants that it's hard to get a group to stop singing this chant. And the reason is there's this musical thing that happens in the chant where people want to keep singing it. And let me see if I can just rattle it off here really quick. I'm going to need a moment to remember it. Let me give you the ritual context setup. So I've got the ritual. Everybody is standing in a horseshoe, and there's two rows of people, and they're facing each other. So it's basically two rows of people in a U shape, and I'm inside the U over here. So everybody's back, everybody in the middle, their back is to me, and we're singing. We're singing this chant and we've been singing it for a while. Like people were visiting 6 different altars and getting pieces of ribbon. So we've been singing this chant for quite some time. And then I managed to get everybody into this position where we're in the 2 rows and everybody, so each person is across from one other person. And I drop my voice out of the chant and it's still going. So, okay. And some of my ritual team members are looking at me. And so I look at them and I just do this. And so they drop their voices out and the chant is still going. And so I deliberately start going around to people. So half the room has their back to me and half the room is in the U shape where they're facing me. It's just that people are in the way. So I go closer into people and I'm, what I later learned is that there was a guy with his back to me at the center of the U. So his back was to me, and he was just singing it. He was in that chant. He had his eyes closed. He was singing. I mean, he was in the zone, and that's why you use chanting like that, because it gets people into the zone. But he had his eyes closed. He wasn't aware of anything that was going on around him, so he wasn't sensitive to that energy shifting. So my understanding is that somebody finally, put their hands on him to get touched him and quiet down. And then I was able to transition to the next piece because it was speaking had to happen, so I couldn't have the chanting keep going. And so I'll sing the chant so you can kind of hear the why the chant wants to continue itself. And I just forgot it again. I haven't. It's not the "Take Me Home Again" chant, although that one's a great one for holding space as well. Okay, so here's how it goes. It's cracking open, reaching down, break my heart, let the light in. Cracking open, reaching down, break my heart, let the light in. And you don't want to stop there, you want to keep going. It's just, there's a musical thing that happens. So it's a great chant if you want the engine to start moving itself, because once people get into that chant, they don't want to stop it. And so the way that I stopped it, once I got the volume down, once we got super energy singer dude with his eyes closed, once we got him to stop singing, then what I did was I drew it out. So it's break my heart, let the light in. And then that signals people very clearly that that's the last round of the chant. And it feels more musically satisfying to have that kind of a closer, because if you sing it the regular way, people are going to keep going with it because they want that musical note to resolve.
Okay, now I need to learn that chant.
Yeah, it was written by a group of folks at Diana's Grove, Lucinda Son and a number of other folks, and then I changed up some of the lyrics. I forget what the original lyrics are. The first part is the way that they wrote it, but then I took the second part from a Sufi quote. I think it's a Rumi quote, that the heart must break to let the light of God enter. Yeah, that one, I love that one. And that one, you can add like 4 or 5 parts of harmony if you've got the harmony folks for it, which is awesome. And I so rarely do, so I don't get to play with that so much. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely times when your energy can run away with you a little bit, and then it's like, oh, what are we gonna do with that? Oftentimes if it's with a chant, and you articulated it, where you have people who were like, okay, we're taking this chant over here, we're gonna do the thing. And so, okay, well, let that roll. Okay. So yeah, there's, sometimes people are just gonna take it and run with it, and very often it's unintentional. It's just people who are really in the moment, and they're just in a very different energetic space than the rest of the group. Often it'll burn off. Often it's like, dropping a bunch of rubbing alcohol on a fire.
Hooray!
It's gonna poof, and then it'll die down, and you let them work it out. But sometimes you've got that Energizer Bunny who's just taking the energy in a different way, and it's, when it's a really hard balance when you can hear the group getting tired, when you hear the group getting energetically tired, and through voice is definitely for me, that's the best barometer of that. I hear people's voices getting tired, and then I know, okay, I've got to transition this one way or the other, and I can't outweight the energy riser and the energy bunny anymore, the Energizer Bunny any longer. So yeah, there's times when I do just have to transition it, but yeah, I would say popping it up and letting it go ahead and pop up, and then starting it out slower, can sometimes help with that. I forget what the chant is, but it's one that speeds up really fast. Like, people just tend to speed it up. And I was at Pagan Spirit Gathering, and the facilitators for this particular ritual said, we want to sing this chant, and we want to sing it very slowly. And they articulated their intentions around it. And then they started singing it, and it sped up. And so they went with it, and they just kept speeding it up and speeding it up and speeding up until nobody could keep up with it anymore. And then they let people, woo! And then they started it again very slowly, and it kept the pace. So that is that's a technique that I see a lot, or not a lot, but it's a technique that can be effective. It's way better than, no, that's too fast. That, if you want a mood breaker, that would be it. That would be the mood breaker.
Yes, you have to teach me that chant. I have to learn it. I have to learn it.
I thought you might like that one.
Yes, I do. because we have almost the same sort of range for voice, and I can do that. I can make that roll really, really nicely.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's me singing it in you know, the range that I can sing in versus I want to say that the version I learned it was crack, no, cracking open, reaching down, which I can do, but it's, you know, a little bit more restrained. So I drop it down into contralto range, happy contralto range. All right. What do we? So did we cover what you wanted to know about? I know talking about energy is so difficult because it's like, you know, it's this amorphous thing. Um,
Yeah, you actually did answer my questions. I have a lot of really good tips on what to do if someone's flying puppet monkey gets away from them.
yeah, and I, you know, and I can't really so much speak to the energetic concept getting away, like, you know, there being too much energy for that. That's really not how my theology and way I work with magic works. Like, if, you know, it's, if that's the energy that we built for it, then it's cool. It's, for me, it's more of the logistics of, I need to end this ritual in 10 minutes.
Yeah, and for me, it's something that I'm not used to. So I know what's going to happen. It's the whole, like, pre-planning for at least several disasters.
Mm-hmm.
So I know what's going to happen. So I need to at least have 4 or 5 things to at least try, so that when it does happen, I'll know I've tried at least 6 things to get it back under control, and I'll be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, the energy running away from me is something that happens so very rarely. It's a shock when it does, and I'm so excited when it does. I'm like, oh yes, this is great. They're singing, and I don't have to push it. You know, it's pushing itself. You know, I'm always hoping that the engine is gonna turn itself as far as the chanting goes. The only problem that is, like, it's, I need this ritual to end in an hour and a half. How am I going to do that? Um,
If you have any questions about ritual facilitation or leadership for pagan groups, please feel free to contact me. I love questions and I love writing articles or recording videos for actual issues that people are facing in the community. If this webinar is useful for you, please consider donating. It is my goal to make this education available for all, but to do that I have to pay the bills. I also have several books available, and there are links below under Show More, or you can contact me via my website or social media.